Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Poe, and today I'm going to be revisiting my favorite books of the year for the past 3 years and coming up with some new versions of top 10 lists for each of those years. Recently, Tori at Tori Morrow did this video. I'll link both her channel and that video below, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. So I want to do it too because it's a great way to reflect on sort of what you have loved, and of those books, what has really stuck with you, what has really been able to have that staying power, has influenced you, have been books that you recommend over and over again. I thought that would be such a fun, reflective exercise to do. I do my kind of favorites of the year a little bit differently than some other people do. I choose my top 3 books in 10 different categories, and that's how I do my favorites, because I do read across a lot of different genres. And each year those categories sort of shift a little bit depending on what sort of books I've been picking up that year and loving. But what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll tell you what my top 3 were in each of the categories for that year, and I'll go 3, 2, 1, and then which books of those I'm going to keep for that top 10 list, as well as at the end see if there were any books that should have made my favorites of the year list that just didn't end up making it when I originally made those lists, but now that I reflect back should. Tori did that and I thought it was such a good idea. So let's go ahead and get started, and we've got a lot of books to talk about. Oh, and a lot of these I do have reviews for, so I'll link my reviews playlist below if you want to go out and see if I have a review for any of those. So let's start with 2019, beginning with nonfiction. For this, at number 3, I had Uncanny Magazine, issue 24, Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction. Then I had Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and then Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi. Of these, I'm going to keep Uncanny Magazine issue 24 because this is one that I find myself thinking about and recommending to people all the time. If you're at all interested in thinking about disability representation in sci-fi, such a good collection of short stories and essays to pick up. I'm also going to keep Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi. One, because it's beautifully written, and 2, because this still really informs the way that I think about a lot of systemic issues of racism in the US. Then moving on to children's picture books, where I've got Julián is a Mermaid by Jessica Love, Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein by Linda Bailey and Julia Sarda, and Nightlights by Lorena Alvarez. All 3 of these are amazing picture books that I absolutely love and I bought myself copies of, but none of them are making my top 10 list. Then I've got YA and middle grade graphic novels, starting with My Little Monster Volume 1 by Robico, The Witch Boy by Molly Ostertag, and The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wong. All of these are excellent graphic novels and manga. I really love them, but again, none of them are making my top 10. Then I've got adult comics, starting with Mouse 1 and 2 by Art Spiegelman, Monstrous Volume 3 by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda, and Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. These are some really excellent, both nonfiction as well as fiction comics that I thought were amazing, but again, not making my top 10. Next is short story collections, starting with Sabrina y Corina by Kali Fajardo Anstein, then Jackalope Wives by T. Kingfisher, and finally Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. I am a huge short story fan. I love reading short stories, so I'm actually going to keep 2 of these. I'm going to keep Sabrina y Corina, which is just like this incredibly beautifully written contemporary set of interconnected short stories about Indigenous Latina women in Colorado that I just absolutely loved, as well as Stories of Your Life and Other by Ted Chiang, because I mean, this is just classic, really beautifully speculative fiction that I cannot get enough of and I highly recommend. Then I've got poetry collections, starting with If They Come For Us by Fatima Asghar, Citizen Illegal by Jose Olivares, and American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin by Terrence Hayes. All 3 of these are incredible poetry that speaks about identity and about politics. They're really filled with so much kind of anger that I love in poetry, but none of them are making my top 10. Then I've got novels in verse, starting with Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, also Lion Island by Margarita Engel, and The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Just as I love poetry, I love novels in verse. These are all so good, but they're not making my top 10. Next is middle grade, where I've got Hurricane Child by Kaysen Callender, Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and A Dash of Trouble by Anna Mediano. I am a huge fan of middle grade, and all of these are sort of middle grade fantasy, but the one that I find myself just still really loving and coming back to and have recommended to so many people is A Dash of Trouble. This is the first book in the Love, Sugar, Magic series. It is so sweet and so good. It's such excellent middle grade contemporary fantasy, and I've recommended this to friends who don't even read middle grade, and they've picked it up and loved it, so really love this one. Next is romance, where I've got Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahara Mafi, and Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbard. So 2019 was the year for me to start getting back into romance. I hadn't been reading romance for almost, a decade before this, and the real book that kind of kickstarted me back into reading a ton of romance is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbard. What an excellent book. So much humor, so much lovely, just personal interactions, lots of really interesting social issues. I mean, it is the book that really made me believe again in reading romance. So definitely this is making my list. Then I got fantasy, starting with The Deep by Rivers Solomon, The Black God's Drums by P. Jelly Clark, and Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. What an excellent fantasy reading year. I'm going to keep two of these. I'm keeping The Black God's Drums by P. Jelly Clark, which is such cool steampunk alternate history fantasy that is just so cool, and I love the way that he paces his novellas. Perfection. Loved this book. And Gods of Jade and Shadow. I really love this. This was my first Silvia Moreno Garcia. I love the world building she does, the way she included Mayan mythology and Mexican history and the road trip aspects of it. Such an excellent book, for sure, on my favorites. And lastly, I have science fiction, where I kind of cheated that year and I put 4 books on the list, which were The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, Semiosis by Sue Burke, and Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delaney. So many great books on this list, but the ones that I think have really stuck with me are An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, because that was just such interesting sci-fi that really had such cool world building and interesting kind of conversations about racism, so many different things. I really enjoyed that book, as well as Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delaney. I think it was just so incredible to see this kind of classic sci-fi work that did so much with linguistics and all sorts of other stuff. It's kind of out there, and I love that about it, so I'm definitely keeping that one too. Okay, now onto my ordering. At number 10, I've got Babel 17, which is so cool, but I don't know how much I recommend this to other people just because it's a little bit confusing at times, but I still think it's excellent. At number 9, I've got An Unkindness of Ghosts, which is, again, such cool sci-fi, but also a little hard to take at times. It does cover some heavy themes. At number 8, I've got Sabrina y Corina, which is just lovely writing. At number 7, I've got Between the World and Me, which, again, it's just so impactful in the way I think about social justice issues. Then at number 6, I've got Uncanny Magazine issue 24, Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction, because again, I recommend this all the time. It is so useful for how to frame the way that we talk about disability. At number 5, I've got The Black God's Drums, which is such a wonderful novella, just so much action and adventure and wonderfulness. At number 4, I've got Gods of Jade and Shadow, which I love the road trip, I love the magic, I love the romance, it's all wonderful. At number 3, I've got A Dash of Trouble. This is just, again, something that has really stuck with me. I have this book displayed on sort of my favorites shelf. It is just such a sweet middle grade fantasy. Absolutely loved it. Number 2, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, because I mean, come on, this is such a great romance. It's so fun, so sweet, so many great feelings. I love this book. And at number 1, Stories of Your Life and Others, because this is just a masterwork of science fiction and fantasy short stories. I love the thought experiments in it. I loved the way that Ted Chiang explored all of these ideas. It is something that I would recommend to all readers, so it is definitely number 1. Now going on to my 2020 favorites, starting with middle grade. So here I've got Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga, A Mixture of Mischief by Ana Mariano, and Sal and Gabby Break the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. Again, these are all excellent books. But the one that of these really sticks with me is Sal and Gabby Break the Universe. This is one of my favorite middle grades of all time. It is hilarious, kind of science fantasy, so much humor and so much just really cool Cuban American identity and culture. It is fantastic. Next, I've got some YA books, starting with Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and Elatsoe by Darcy Little Badger. Even though originally I put it at second, I'm going to keep Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo because this one I think just really spoke to me, this contemporary about two sisters dealing with their father's death and dealing with kind of coming together and understanding a lot of their family dynamics. It was beautifully written and it's in verse. I love that. So yeah, this one I'm keeping. Next, I've got memoirs, Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson, The Best We Could Do by Thebui, and Good Talk by Mira Jacob. This was an excellent year for memoirs. All of these are really amazing, but I'm going to keep both of the graphic novel memoirs. The Best We Could Do by Thebui is this story of intergenerational trauma for Vietnamese refugees who come to the US, and the way that it examines how that trauma is passed down and understanding her own family's histories is so beautiful. And then Good Talk by Mira Jacob is just fantastic in terms of talking about issues of racism and all sorts of things like that in modern day America through the conversations that Jacob has with her family, with her friends, with strangers. It is such an incredible book that I definitely is making my top 10. Next, I've got some poetry. When My Brother Was an Aztec by Natalie Diaz, Sana Sana by Ariana Brown, and Peluda by Melissa Lozada Oliva. All of these are fantastic poems about identity and about just so many issues that they face. I love these poetry collections, but the one of these that really is so much deeply in my heart is Peluda. I loved this. It's so funny and it is so moving, and the issues it discusses, I just can't get enough of Melissa Lozada Oliva's writing, so this one for sure is making my top 10. Then I've got some romance, starting with The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, If the Boot Fits by Rebecca Weatherspoon, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is when I started to really hit my stride in romance. These are all fantastic romance novels, and I'm going to keep two of these. If the Boot Fits by Rebecca Weatherspoon is such a great contemporary. It's sort of like a very loose Cinderella retelling, and I loved the dynamic between the characters and the issues that they dealt with. And then Take a Hint, Danny Brown is my favorite book in the Brown Sisters trilogy. I could not get enough of this, especially because I very much identified with Danny Brown and her kind of like very abrasive personality, and also I loved the hero in this, who's such a cinnamon roll. So both of these are making my list. Then I've got historical fiction, starting with The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and Cantoras by Carolina de Robertes. These are all fantastic historical fictions, but the one of these that really sticks with me is Cantoras. I think about this book all the time. It is such a beautiful look at these queer women in the 1970s in Uruguay, and it's like poetic. I love the writing in this. This is one that I for sure have recommended to so many people, and it is making my top 10. Then I've got literary fiction, starting with Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, We Need New Names by Novaila Bulawayo, and What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky by Leslie Neka Arima. All of these are really fantastic, have excellent commentary on society, but none of them are making my top 10. Then I've got horror, and I do not generally read horror, but I read quite a few excellent ones in 2020, starting with Small Spaces by Catherine Arden, Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, and Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. all of these really surprised me by how much I like them, given that I generally don't like anything that's, kind of horror adjacent, but these were so good. And in particular, Mexican Gothic just really sticks with me. I love Gothic novels, and I love the way that Silvia Moreno Garcia took this opportunity to examine a lot of the history of colonialism in Mexico and use the Gothic novel to explore that. It's perfection, and I definitely am keeping this one. Then for fantasy, I've got The 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greenberg, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, and The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. And of these, I am definitely keeping The Empress of Salt and Fortune, which is just an epic, historical feeling fantasy that is all done in a small little novella. It is moving. I love the writing. It's got a really unique framing device, just perfection. So for sure, this is making my top 10. Then lastly, I've got science fiction, where I have Prime Meridian by Silvia Moreno Garcia, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and Network Effect by Martha Wells. These were all such fun reads, really cool ideas, but none of them are making my top 10. Now for my ordering. At number 10, I have Clap When You Land, which is just such a great contemporary. At number 9, I have If the Boot Fits, which I really loved the sweetness of this story. At number 9, I have Mexican Gothic, which does that beautiful balance of social commentary and really cool, creepy story. At number 7, I've got Sal and Gabby Break the Universe, because so much joy. This brings me so much joy. I love it. At number 6, I've got Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which brings me also so much joy. It's just so funny and so much lovely romance. At number 5, I've got Peluda. This is just one of my favorite poetry collections of all time, so it is very high on my list. At number 4, I've got Cantoras. Such lovely writing. I seriously recommend this to so many people. It's fantastic. At number 3, I've got The Empress of Salt and Fortune. I'm still so impressed. I have reread this book and it just stands up. It's better every time I read it because I understand a lot of what's going on even more. Really fantastic novella. At number 2, The Best We Could Do. This is one of the best graphic novels that I've ever read. I think it's so well done, and it just is moving in the way that it examines all of that intergenerational trauma. And at number 1, I've got Good Talk. This is one of my favorite books. It is so well done in terms of the way it examines all of those interactions that Mara Jacob has. It's just fantastic in its social commentary, and it's got such a unique style of graphic novel as well. So for sure, number 1. And although in 2019 there weren't any books that I didn't have on my original top favorites list that I thought should be added in 2020 there is one, which is Untamed Shore by Silvia Moreno Garcia. The more I think about it, the more I think that Untamed Shore is one of my favorite books by Silvia Moreno Garcia, so it deserves to be on this list. It is sort of like a historical thriller, but I loved the slowness of it. I loved the way that this examined so many interesting dynamics of race and money and power, and it just had such interesting growth for the main character. So I'm going to insert this just above Mexican Gothic on my list. So now I've got number 8 is Untamed Shore, 9 is Mexican Gothic, and 10 is If the Boot Fits. Okay, so we have one more year to go, which is 2021. I had some great books this year. In nonfiction, I had You Look Like a Thing and I Love You by Janelle Shane, Because Internet by Gretchen McCulloch, and Words Matter, Meaning and Power by Sally McConnell Ginnett. These are such great books, really, really excellent nonfiction that I would for sure recommend, but they don't quite make my list. Then I've got some memoirs. The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, Saigon by Phuc Tran, and Golem Girl by Riva Lehrer. Of these, I'm going to keep Golem Girl because I still think about this. It is all about this artist who grew up queer and with spina bifida and sort of finding her voice and finding her way of expressing herself through art, as well as coming to terms with so much internalized ableism that she grew up with and becoming really an advocate for people with disability. I think it's a fantastic memoir, and it's definitely making my top 10. Then I've got some graphic memoirs, starting with Feelings by Manjit Tap, I Remember Beirut by Zaina Abereshed, translated from French by Edward Gavin, and Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder. These are such good graphic memoirs, but the one that really sticks with me is I Remember Beirut. It is just these moments of memory, these impressions almost. I love Abereshed's really her illustration style and these kind of memories of being in this war-torn location and what she kept with her as a child. It's just really well done, and this is the one that sticks with me. Then I've got some middle grade. Cici Rios and the River of Souls by Kyla Rivera, The Year I Flew Away by Marie Arnold, and Lilani of the Distant Sea by Erin Entrada Kelly. Of these, I think Lilani of the Distant Sea is the one that sticks with me the most. It is this secondary world fantasy that is inspired by Filipino folklore, and it's got really kind of a scary feel to it. It's quite dark at times, but it's this story of family and of journey and of kind of pushing through and trying to make sure that you take care of the people you care about. It's beautiful, and I loved the magic in it, so this makes my list. Then I've got some short story collections, starting with Ripples and Other Stories by Shi Li Kao, The Office of Historical Corrections by Daniel Evans, and This Strange Way of Dying by Silvia Moreno Garcia. These are such excellent short story collections, but none of them quite make my list. Next, I've got romance, starting with The Craft of Love by E. E. Ottoman, A Thorn in the Saddle by Rebecca Weatherspoon, and Man vs. Durian by Jackie Lau. And of these, I'm keeping Man vs. Durian. Man vs. Durian is one of my favorite romances ever. It's got the most adorable couple, a woman who is just super prickly and super difficult, and a hero who is just so laid back, so chill, such a cinnamon roll, and there is so much food in this. I loved all of the food descriptions. So this is one of the things that really cemented Jackie Lau as my top romance author that I'm reading right now. I love this story so much. Then I've got some contemporaries, starting with Signs Preceding the End of the World by Yuri Herrera, translated from Spanish by Lisa Dillman, Memorial by Brian Washington, and Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Kong. And of these, I think that Goodbye Vitamin is the one that really sticks with me, which is just a story told almost like journal entries of a woman who goes back to try to help out her family when her father is dealing with early onset Alzheimer's, and just that dynamic and her rebuilding her relationship with her parents as an adult and everything that she's going through. I loved this story so much, and it really sticks with me, so it makes my top 10. Then I've got some historical fiction, starting with Kim Ji-young, born 1982 by Chol Nam-ju, translated from Korean by Jamie Chang, Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn, and Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lau. And of these, I think Last Night at the Telegraph Club is the one that I really keep thinking about. It is this beautiful historical fiction set in the 1950s during the Red Scare in Chinatown in San Francisco, and we follow this girl who's coming of age and realizing that she's queer, and trying to deal with all of that is just so beautiful. And it's such a quiet novel that I really could have just stayed in for 1,000 pages. It was so lovely. I really like this one. Then for science fiction, I had The Citadel of Weeping Pearls by Alia de Bedard, The Stone Weta by Octavia Cade, and The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. This was a very strong year for science fiction for me, and I'm keeping both The Stone Weta, which is this really cool, almost like espionage thriller about climate science, where these climate scientists in this kind of dystopian near future are trying to store and share data. It's fantastic. Really loved that one. And The Vanished Birds is just, it's so literary, it's so beautifully written, and it has so much deep emotional connection to the characters and everything they're going through, and exploring so much to do with these people through these sci-fi elements of just, oh, it's so fantastic. I loved this one, so it's making my list. And then for fantasy, I had The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison, The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, and Realm of Ash by Tasha Suri. And maybe not surprisingly, I'm going to keep both Tasha Suri books. So The Jasmine Throne is just such epic fantasy. It is beautifully written, and it's got so much political intrigue and incredible characters and such cool magic, and I loved it so much. And then I'm also keeping Realm of Ash because that is just, it's sort of a fantasy romance, but it has got incredible conversations about empire and about sort of the way that we're complicit in it and how we can move on from it. It's just one of my top books ever. I love both of these, so they're for sure making my list. And now for my ordering. At number 10, I've got I Remember Beirut, which is just so unique. I've got at number 9, Lilani of the Distant Sea, because it's that magical middle grade. At number 8, I've got The Stone Weta. At number 7, I've got Golem Girl, which still really sticks with me. At number 6, I've got Goodbye Vitamin. This is on my favorite shelf. I think about it. I really love kind of these ideas of exploring grief, and it's such a well done novel. At number 5, I've got Last Night at the Telegraph Club. Again, fantastic historical fiction, all about queer coming of age. Really recommend it. At number 5, I've got Man vs. Durian, because this is just fantastic, such a great romance. At number 3, I've got The Vanished Birds. Such amazing sci-fi, such amazing writing, really, really beautiful. At number 2, I've got The Jasmine Throne, because it satisfies all of that love of epic fantasy I have. And at number 1, I've got Realm of Ash, which blends beautifully the fantasy and the romance and just checks all of my boxes. Okay, so I know that was a lot of books to get through, but it is so fun to look back and reflect on what my favorites have been for the past 3 years, and of those, which ones have really, really stuck with me. If you guys have read any of these books, if you would order things differently, I know that my taste is a little different from some other people's too, but it's just fantastic. So many good books. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anything you want to chat with me about, go ahead and leave me a comment down below.